The planet burned under a sky split by fire. Ships fell like dying stars, their trails painting the air with smoke and ash. The war had not come slowly. It had crashed upon humanity like a tidal wave, and no one had been ready. Millions had died before the first counterattack was even planned. Now only a handful of human survivors remained, scattered across worlds already claimed by the alien empire. Among them was Kale, the last man known to carry the cure for a galaxy-killing plague hidden inside his very DNA. He had been a soldier once, but now he was only a man running from death. The alien armies hunted him with more desperation than any other target. They did not just want him dead. They wanted his body intact, his blood harvested, his cells broken apart for the cure they could never create themselves. He knew that if they caught him, the cure would fall into the wrong hands. Entire civilizations could be wiped out, and the galaxy would drown in chaos. Kale's footsteps echoed in the steel corridors of a ruined city on the edge of the alien frontier. The air was thick with the smell of burned metal and the distant sound of collapsing towers. He had not eaten in 2 days, but hunger was a small thing compared to the weight of being the last hope for billions. His pulse quickened as he ducked behind a broken wall. He could hear them, 3 alien soldiers moving in tight formation, their voices clicking like sharp blades in the air. He gripped his weapon tighter, knowing it would not save him in a direct fight. His only chance was to stay ahead, to keep moving until he found a safe path out of the city. But safe paths no longer existed here. The aliens controlled every street, every building, every shadow. His legs burned with fatigue, but stopping was not an option. A burst of energy fire struck the wall beside him, showering him with sparks. They had seen him. He ran. Through shattered glass, over debris, down streets where silence felt heavier. Then gunfire. The sound of pursuit grew louder, and the ground shook under the weight of alien war machines. He turned a corner and froze. A figure stood in the middle of the street, framed by the blue light of a collapsing power grid. She was unlike any alien he had seen before, tall, impossibly graceful, her skin shimmering with deep shades of blue and violet. A crown of crystal seemed to grow from her head, and her eyes glowed with fierce light. She did not raise a weapon. Instead, she raised her hand in warning. "Stay behind me," she said, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. Kale hesitated, unsure if this was a trap. No alien had ever told a human to hide behind them, but the soldiers were seconds away. He stepped closer, every muscle tense. She moved faster than he thought possible, her armor catching the light as she drew a blade that seemed forged from pure energy. The first alien soldier fell before they even realized she had struck. Kale had seen warriors fight before, but never like this. She moved through them like a storm, her strike silent but deadly. Within moments, the street was littered with the bodies of his hunters. She turned to him, her gaze unblinking. "You carry something the galaxy cannot lose," she said. "From this moment, I am your shield." Her words were not a request. They were a vow. Kale felt something strange relief, but also fear. She was not human, yet she had chosen to protect him. They moved quickly, avoiding the patrols now swarming the area. Kale kept stealing glances at her, trying to understand why an alien princess, if her armor and bearing were any sign, risk herself for him. She offered no explanation, only scanning every shadow with the eyes of someone who had fought far too many battles. "You don't trust me yet," she said without looking back. "But you will, because the alternative is death." Her tone made it clear she was not exaggerating. As they slipped into the cover of the forest beyond the city, the distant hum of alien war engines followed them. Kale knew the hunt was far from over, but for the first time in days he was not running alone. The fate of the cure, and perhaps the galaxy, now rested in the hands of an alien princess whose reasons were still a mystery. Asterisk. Kale followed the alien princess deeper into the forest. The trees here rose high into the mist, their glowing leaves casting pale light on the ground. Every sound felt sharp against the silence. He could still hear the distant rumble of engines behind them. The hunt was not over. If anything, the enemy would now move faster. His breath came in shallow bursts, and his hands were still trembling from the fight in the city. The princess moved with quiet precision, every step placed with care. Her armor reflected flashes of violet and silver when light touched it. She glanced back at him from time to time, her expression unreadable. Kale wondered what she saw when she looked at him. A soldier, a survivor, or simply the carrier of something she needed to protect. She spoke little, but her presence made it harder to think of her as an enemy. At last, they reached a clearing where the forest floor opened to reveal a hidden landing platform. A small craft sat in the center, sleek and black, its hull humming with low energy. Kale froze at the sight of it. "If we fly, they'll track us," he said. She shook her head. "Not where I'm taking you," she replied. Her voice carried a weight that told him this was not a guess. She had a plan, and it was dangerous. Before they could board, a sound split the air, a high-pitched whistle followed by a crash. Energy. Blasts lit up the clearing as alien soldiers poured in from the trees. Kale's heart slammed against his ribs. He dropped behind a crate, pulling his weapon free. The princess was already moving, her blade cutting arcs of light through the smoke. The attackers fell one by one, but more kept coming. Their shouts filled the air like the roar of a wave. Kale fired at the closest soldier, the recoil jarring. His arms, one blast struck the ground near his leg, burning the soil black. The princess leapt between him and the next attack, her armor absorbing the impact with a flare of energy. "Stay behind me," she ordered, voice sharp and cold. He obeyed without thinking. Her movements were a blur, each strike ending a threat before it could reach him. Yet even as she fought, he could see the lines of strain in her face. When the last soldier fell, the clearing was silent again, except for the faint hum of the ship. Kale's chest heaved as he scanned the tree line for any sign of more enemies. The princess stood still, her blade dripping with faint light before it faded away. She did not look at him when she spoke. "They will not stop until you are dead or captured. We must leave now." He nodded, feeling the truth of her words in his bones. They boarded the craft. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of metal and strange herbs. The controls pulsed with alien symbols, glowing in soft blue patterns. She took the pilot's seat, her hands moving with effortless speed. Kale strapped himself into the chair behind her. The engines rose to a deep, steady thrum. "Where are we going?" he asked. She did not turn. "Somewhere they cannot follow," she said. That was all. The ship lifted from the ground, the trees shrinking below them. Through the canopy, Kale could see the shattered skyline of the Kofi city they had escaped. Smoke still curled into the sky. His thoughts were a tangled mess. He had trusted no one for weeks, yet here he was putting his life in the hands of an alien princess. Her voice broke the silence. "Your DNA is not just a cure, it is a weapon. And the war is bigger than you think." The words settled heavily. In his mind, outside the forest faded into mountains, then mountains into endless plains under a sky painted with strange colors. Kale realized he had not asked her name. "What do I call you?" he said. She hesitated before answering. "Lyris," she said. The name felt sharp and soft at the same time. He repeated it quietly, testing the sound. She gave no reaction. But he thought he saw the corner of her mouth move, just slightly. Kale knew that every moment they stayed alive brought them closer to a point where choices would matter more than survival. The cure in his blood could save worlds or destroy them. And now its fate was tied to hers. The ship cut through the strange skies, leaving the war-torn forest far behind. Kale sat strapped in, watching the horizon shift into colors he had never seen before. The air outside shimmered like liquid glass, disturbed only by the quiet hum of the engines. He tried to read the alien symbols on the console, but they meant nothing to him. Every movement of the princess at the controls was precise and confident. It was clear she had flown this path many times before. Hours passed in tense silence. Kale's mind kept returning to her words from earlier about his DNA being a weapon. He had always known it was valuable, but a weapon? That changed everything. If it could destroy as easily as it could heal, then the danger was greater than he had imagined. He looked at Lyris, wondering if she saw him as a person or as a living tool. Her eyes stayed forward, unblinking, locked on the path ahead. The ship began to descend toward a vast expanse of jagged cliffs. Between them, Kale saw glimmers of water, glowing faintly under the alien sun. The landing zone was hidden beneath an overhang, almost invisible from the air. Lyris guided the ship down with a steady hand, the craft slipping into shadow. When they touched the ground, the engines faded into silence. She stood without a word, motioning for him to follow. The air outside was cooler, heavy with the scent of minerals and damp stone. They entered a narrow passage between the cliffs. The walls rose high, cutting off most of the light. Strange markings ran along the rock, glowing faint blue. Kale traced them with his eyes but didn't dare touch. "This place is not on any map," Lyris said softly. "It belongs to my people alone." He could hear pride in her voice, but also something else, fear. Whatever this place was, it was meant to stay hidden. That made him wonder why she had brought him here. The path widened into a cavern so large it felt like a city underground. Towers of crystal jutted from the floor and ceiling, humming faintly with energy. Pools of clear water reflected the glow, casting shifting patterns on the walls. A small group of alien warriors waited near the center, their armor different from the soldiers who had hunted him. These carried no guns, only long spears that shimmered like Lyris's blade. They bowed their heads slightly as she approached, though their eyes lingered on Kale with suspicion. One of the warriors spoke in a language Kale couldn't understand. Lyris responded sharply, her tone clipped and commanding. The warriors' expression hardened, but he stepped aside, allowing them to pass. Kale leaned closer to her. "What did he say?" She didn't look at him. "He asked why I brought a human into the heart of our sanctuary," she said. "And what did you tell him?" he asked. Her answer was quiet, but firm. That if he wished to live to see the next season, he would not question me again. They entered a chamber at the far end of the cavern. It was smaller, but every surface gleamed with etched patterns. In the center stood a device unlike anything Kale had ever seen. It looked like a circle of liquid light, floating a few inches above the floor. Lyris approached it with a certain reverence, her hand hovering over the glow. "This is the vault," she said. "It contains the only knowledge that can guide the cure to its full power. Without it, your DNA is only half a key." Her gaze met his. "With it, you could end the plague or unleash it at will." The weight of her words pressed down on him. He stepped closer, feeling the air around the vault vibrate. "Why show me this?" he asked. "Because if I die, you must know where to go," she replied. The simplicity of her answer left him silent. She was preparing for a future where she might not survive. That realization sat heavily in his chest. She turned away from him, adjusting the controls on the vault. Symbols shifted in the air, spinning in patterns he could not read. Outside the chamber, the sound of footsteps echoed. They were not the slow, measured steps of her warriors. These were quick, urgent, and growing louder. Lyris froze, her eyes narrowing. "They found us," she said. Kale's heart kicked hard against his ribs. He reached for his weapon instinctively. Her voice was calm but unyielding. "Stay behind me and do not fire unless I fall." She stepped toward the entrance, her blade forming in her hand with a low hum. Cale tightened his grip on his weapon, feeling the cold metal against his palm. He didn't know if he could protect her, but he knew one thing for certain. If she fell, everything they had done would be for nothing. The chamber's dim light seemed to shrink as the footsteps closed. In. Cale's pulse thudded in his ears, each beat matching the sharp rhythm of approaching enemies. Lyra stood tall at the doorway, blade angled downward but ready to strike. Her posture was calm, yet there was a coiled energy in her every movement. Cale could sense she was preparing for more than just a simple fight. The first figure appeared in the doorway, its armor black and ridged like the shell of a predator. Behind it came 3 more, each armed with weapons that hissed with energy. Cale recognized them immediately. They were the same type of soldiers who had hunted him in the city, but these moved with even greater precision. Lyra didn't wait for them to speak. Her blade flashed upward in a single stroke, and the nearest soldier fell before it could raise its weapon. Cale fired at the second, the recoil forcing him back a step. The blast struck true, sending the soldier crashing into the wall. Lyra shifted to block the other 2, her strikes so fast they blurred. Sparks danced off the walls with every clash. Cale kept moving, staying where she told him, but the confined space made it hard to avoid incoming fire. A bolt scorched the floor near his feet, filling the air with the acrid scent of burned stone. The battle spilled into the corridor outside. Cale followed, keeping low and aiming carefully. Lyra fought ahead of him, her armor glowing brighter with each strike as if it were feeding on the energy of combat. She turned her head just enough to speak. "If they breach the vault, all is lost." Her voice was steady, but Cale could hear the urgency beneath it. He fired again, and another soldier fell with a sharp metallic clang against the floor. More. Footsteps echoed from deeper within the cavern. Cale's stomach tightened. They weren't just sending a small squad. This was an entire strike force. The shadows at the end of the corridor shifted, and more figures emerged. Lyra glanced back at him. "We cannot hold here," she said. Without hesitation, she pressed something into his palm, a small crystal device, warm to the touch. "If I fall, take this to the vault. It will open it for you." The weight of it felt heavier than it should. They moved quickly, retreating toward another tunnel that branched away from the main hall. Cale could feel the heat from energy blasts striking the walls behind them. The narrow passage made it harder for the soldiers to advance in numbers, but it also limited their room to fight. Lyra kept just ahead, every movement purposeful. Cale covered the rear, firing at any shadow that moved. His arm ached from the strain, but adrenaline kept him going. The tunnel opened into a smaller chamber lined with crystal pillars. The air here was warmer, and the glow from the crystals cast shifting patterns on the walls. Lyra stopped, scanning the room quickly. "This place will amplify energy," she said. Cale didn't understand at first, but when he fired his weapon, the blast was brighter and stronger, striking with twice the force. Lyra's blade burned hotter too, cutting through armor with ease. For a moment, they gained the advantage. The soldiers hesitated, their formation breaking under the intensified attacks. Lyra pressed forward, driving them back toward the tunnel. Cale kept firing, his shots ringing through the chamber. But then the glow from the crystals began to dim, as if their power was being drained by the fight. The soldiers seemed to sense it, pushing forward with renewed aggression. One of them lunged toward Cale, weapon raised. Lyra intercepted it, her blade piercing its chest before it could strike. "Move," she ordered, grabbing his arm and pulling him toward another exit at the far side of the chamber. They stumbled into a narrow passage that sloped upward. The sound of pursuit followed them, but it was fainter now. Cale's chest burned with every breath. He still clutched the crystal. device she had given him, its glow steady in his hand. He didn't ask what it would do. He already knew it was something worth dying to protect. As they emerged into a higher cavern, a cold draft swept over them. Lyris slowed, her eyes scanning the shadows. The space here was vast and open, with no cover. Kale could feel the danger, pressing in from all sides. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Stay close," she said. "From this point on, every step could be the one that decides our fate." The upper cavern stretched wide, its walls glittering with frost. Cold air bit into Kale's skin, making each breath feel sharp. He tightened his grip on the crystal device, the steady glow casting faint light on his hands. Lyris moved ahead, her blade lowered but ready. Every step echoed in the stillness, a reminder of how exposed they were. Somewhere in the shadows, he could almost feel eyes watching them. They reached the far side of the cavern, where a narrow bridge of stone arched over a deep chasm. The drop below was endless, the sound of rushing water far beneath them. Lyris stepped onto the bridge without hesitation, her balance perfect despite the ice clinging to the surface. Kale followed, his boots slipping slightly on the slick stone. Halfway across, a distant clatter made them both freeze. From the darkness ahead, shapes emerged, their armor reflecting the faint glow of the bridge. The soldiers moved slowly at first, then broke into a run. Behind them, more appeared, cutting off the way they had come. Kale's heart pounded. They were trapped on a bridge too narrow for more than one person to fight at a time. Lyris turned, placing herself between Kale and the advancing enemies from the front. "I will hold them," she said. Her voice was calm, but he could see the tension in her jaw. The first soldier lunged, and her blade flashed in the cold light. Kale fired past her at the ones approaching from behind. The narrow bridge made aiming difficult, and each missed shot sent sparks into the abyss. Lyris fought with fierce precision, each strike sending another soldier over the edge into the darkness. But for every one that fell, another appeared. The air was filled with the sound of clashing weapons and the roar of rushing water below. Kale's arms ached from the strain of holding his weapon steady. One soldier managed to slip past Lyris. Charging straight at Kale, he reacted without thinking, slamming the butt of his weapon into its helmet before firing at point-blank range. The body toppled backward, disappearing into the chasm. Lyris glanced over her shoulder briefly, a flicker of approval in her eyes before she turned back to the fight. The bridge shook under the combined weight of the soldiers, and Kale felt the stone groan beneath his boots. They pushed forward, step by step, until they reached the end of the bridge. Lyris shoved the last soldier over the edge before spinning to face the one still advancing from behind. She raised her free hand, pressing it against a panel embedded in the rock wall. A section of the cavern opened, revealing a narrow tunnel. "Inside now," she ordered. Kale obeyed, ducking into the passage as she followed and sealed the wall behind them. The tunnel was dark and steep, forcing them to climb. The sound of battle faded quickly, replaced by the distant hum of something deep within the rock. Kale's legs burned from the effort, but he kept moving, knowing they could not slow down. "Where does this lead?" he asked between breaths. "To the place where the cure will either be secured or lost forever," Lyris replied. Her voice was low, almost as if she feared the walls might overhear them. At last, the tunnel opened into a chamber carved entirely from black stone. In its center stood a massive structure shaped like a spiral, glowing faintly with the same blue light as the crystal device in Kale's hand. The air was warmer here, charged with a strange energy that made his skin prickle. Lyris approached the structure with careful steps, her eyes fixed on its core. "This is the heart of the vault," she said. "Only the crystal can unlock its power." Kale stepped forward, holding the device out. "If we open it now, they might find us," he warned. Lyris turned to face him, her expression hard. "If we wait, they will take it from us," she said. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the weight of the decision pressing between them. Finally she reached out, her fingers brushing his as she took the crystal. The contact was brief, but it left a spark in his chest. She placed the crystal into a slot at the base of the spiral. The structure pulsed, light flowing upward in a slow wave until the entire chamber glowed. Symbols appeared in the air, spinning and shifting. Cale didn't understand their meaning, but he could feel the importance in every flicker. Somewhere, deep inside, he knew that whatever happened next would change everything. Asterisk. The chamber's glow deepened until the air itself seemed to vibrate. Cale could feel the warmth from the spiral radiating across his skin. The light painted Lyris's armor in shifting shades of blue and silver, making her seem almost unreal. She stood perfectly still, her eyes locked on the rising symbols. They twisted into patterns he couldn't decipher, yet he felt certain they were speaking in a language older than any he had known. A low hum filled the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. The ground trembled underfoot, dust falling from the high ceiling. Cale took a step back, his instincts warning him of danger. Lyris didn't move, but her grip tightened on the hilt of her blade. "It is awakening," she said. Her tone carried no fear, only certainty. "And once it is fully awake, there will be no turning back." Suddenly, the spiral split apart, revealing a core of liquid light. The glow spilled across the floor in flowing streams that wove around their feet. Cale's heart raced as a beam shot upward, striking the ceiling and vanishing into the rock above. The hum became a steady pulse, as if the entire chamber now had a heartbeat. Lyris stepped closer to the core, the light reflecting in her eyes like fire. "This is the true key," she said. "With it, the cure will know where to go." Before Cale could reply, the wall behind them shook violently. A section burst inward, scattering shards of stone across the floor. Soldiers poured through the breach, their armor catching the chamber's light. Cale raised his weapon and fired, the sound of each shot ringing sharp against the hum. Lyris was already in motion, her blade cutting through the first attacker before the soldier could aim. The fight was quick and brutal, the confined space leaving no room for mistakes. One soldier broke past them, rushing toward the spiral. Cale reacted instantly, tackling it to the ground. They struggled, armor clashing in a harsh rhythm. The soldier's claws raked across his shoulder, but Cale ignored the pain and forced the weapon from its grip. He rolled aside and fired point blank. The blast sent the soldier crumpling to the ground. Lyris glanced back at him, her expression unreadable before she turned to face the next wave. The fight dragged on, each moment heavier than the last. The soldiers fought with a desperate fury, as if they understood the spiral's importance. Cale's arms shook from the strain of constant firing. His shoulder burned, and his breathing came hard. Lyris moved like a shadow of steel, her strikes clean and precise, yet even she was slowing. The sheer number of enemies was wearing them both down. The hum of the spiral grew faster, almost as if urging them to finish what they had started. With a sharp cry, Lyris cut down the last soldier in front of her. She staggered slightly, but her focus never wavered. She turned to Cale. "The sequence is complete," she said. "Take your position." Confused but trusting her, Cale moved toward the spiral's base. The streams of light shifted, curling around his feet. The glow intensified, and a sudden rush of warmth flooded his body. His vision blurred as the symbols in the air seemed to burn brighter. He felt something deep inside him stir, a connection forming between his own blood and the spiral's light. It wasn't pain, but it was overwhelming. His heartbeat matched the chamber's pulse, and each breath felt charged with power. Lyris's voice cut through the haze. "Hold still. It is reading you." Her words were calm, but the tension in her eyes told him she understood the danger. If he broke the connection too soon, all of this could be lost. The warmth spread to his hands, then to his chest, until it seemed his entire body was glowing from within. The symbols slowed their movement, settling into a single shape above the spiral. Lyra stepped forward, her hand resting briefly on his shoulder. "It is done," she said. Her voice was quieter now, but no less steady. She removed the crystal from the spiral, and the light began to fade back into the core. Cale swayed, exhaustion hitting him all at once. His legs felt weak, but Lyris caught his arm before he could fall. The spiral dimmed until the chamber was left in shadow once more. The hum was gone, replaced by the distant sound of water dripping from the walls. Lyris looked toward the sealed tunnel ahead. "We have what we came for," she said. "But the hardest part still lies ahead." The air in the chamber felt heavier after the spiral went dark. Cale's breathing was slow and uneven, the weight of exhaustion pressing into his muscles. Lyris kept her hand on his arm until she was sure he could stand on his own. The faint glow from the crystal device was the only light left, casting long shadows along the black stone walls. Outside the sealed entrance, the distant echo of movement reminded them their enemies were still close. They moved toward the far tunnel, each step careful and deliberate. The path was narrow, forcing them to walk in single file. Cold air drifted through the cracks in the stone, carrying the faint scent of smoke. Cale wondered if the battle outside had reached this deep. Lyris walked ahead without looking back, her focus fixed entirely on the way forward. He could feel her urgency in the quick, precise pace she kept. The tunnel opened into a high cavern where the ceiling was lost in darkness. Water dripped from unseen heights, falling into a pool that rippled faintly in the dim light. Across the pool was a massive stone door, its surface etched with the same symbols Cale had seen above the spiral. Lyris slowed, her gaze sweeping the shadows. "This is the last gate," she said. Her voice was steady, but there was a sharp edge to it, as if she knew what waited beyond. They stepped onto a narrow path that wound along the edge of the pool. Cale kept close to the wall, careful not to slip into the cold water. His eyes scanned the surface, half expecting something to rise from the depths. When they reached the door, Lyris pressed the crystal into a recess at its center. The symbols lit up, the lines glowing brighter until the entire door shimmered. With a deep groan, the stone split down the middle, revealing the passage beyond. The corridor on the other side was lined with pillars carved from dark crystal. Each one pulsed faintly, as if alive. Cale's steps echoed between them, the sound swallowed quickly by the thick air. He felt the weight of the place pressing in, like unseen eyes watching from the shadows. "What is this place?" he asked quietly. "The last safe road," Lyris replied. "If we make it through here, the cure will be beyond their reach." Halfway through the corridor, the sound of footsteps broke the silence. They came from both ahead and behind, the rhythm steady and unhurried. Cale's stomach tightened. The enemy had been waiting for them. Lyris's blade formed in her hand with a faint hum, the light glinting off the pillars. "Stay close to me," she said. Her voice was low but firm, the kind of tone that left no room for argument. Cale tightened his grip on his weapon and prepared himself. The first group appeared from the shadows ahead. Their armor was heavier than before, designed for close combat. Behind Cale, another squad emerged, cutting off their retreat. The corridor was too narrow for open movement, forcing the battle into brutal close-range strikes. Lyris moved like a shield in motion, her blade blocking blows that would have cut Cale down. He fired at the gaps between enemies, the recoil jolting his shoulder each time. The fight pressed them toward the side wall, their space shrinking with every clash. One soldier lunged at Cale, knocking the weapon from his hands. He staggered back, barely avoiding the blade that followed. Before the soldier could strike again, Lyris's weapon cut through its chest. She grabbed Cale by the collar and shoved him behind her. "Pick it up," she ordered. Her eyes never leaving the enemy in front of her, Kale scrambled for his weapon, his fingers brushing the cold metal just as another soldier charged. He swung it upward, firing a shot that struck the attacker in the shoulder. The soldier fell back, but others moved in to take its place. The air was thick with the sound of clashing steel and the sharp hiss of energy discharges. Lyris's strikes grew sharper, her movements fueled by sheer will to keep the path open. Finally, the last soldier fell, its weapon clattering against the stone floor. The corridor was silent again, except for the sound of their breathing. Kale leaned against one of the pillars, his arms aching from the fight. Lyris scanned the shadows one last time before lowering her blade. "We cannot stop now," she said. "The end is close, but so is the danger." They moved through the last stretch of the corridor, the glowing pillars fading behind them. The air grew warmer, carrying a faint metallic scent. Kale's legs felt heavy, but he forced himself to match Lyris's pace. She walked with purpose, her eyes fixed on the faint light ahead. Every step seemed to carry the weight of everything they had fought for. The crystal device in her hand pulsed softly, as if sensing they were nearing their destination. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, unlike any Kale had seen before. The floor was made of smooth black stone, reflecting the light from a massive construct in the center. It rose high, its shape like an open flower made of crystal and steel. At its core burned a steady sphere of golden light. Kale felt its warmth even from across the room. Lyris stopped and turned to him, her voice quiet but steady. "This is where it must end." They approached the construct together. The golden light shifted, almost as if acknowledging their presence. Lyris stepped forward and placed the crystal into a narrow slot at the base. A deep vibration filled the chamber, the golden light flaring brighter. The warmth turned into a steady wave that spread outward. Kale felt it sink into his bones, into the very blood that carried the cure. "It is reading you again," Lyris said, her gaze locked on the core. The light swirled, pulling faint strands from Kale's skin like shimmering threads. They rose toward the sphere, merging with it until the glow became even brighter. His chest tightened, but there was no pain, only a deep, strange connection. He felt as though the construct could see every part of him, every choice he had made, every fear he had hidden. Lyris placed a steadying hand on his arm. "Do not fight it. Let it take what it needs." The golden light pulsed, and suddenly the chamber's walls lit with moving patterns. Maps, symbols, and shapes filled the air, spreading across the space like a living mural. Kale didn't understand their meaning, but he knew they carried the cure's path coordinates for where it needed to go to save entire worlds. Lyris's eyes scanned the patterns quickly, committing them to memory. "Once it leaves this place, there will be no retrieving it," she said. "It will spread faster than they can stop it." A sudden explosion shook the chamber, cutting through the moment. The far wall cracked open, sending shards of stone across the floor. Soldiers poured in, their weapons raised. Kale staggered back, instinct driving him to protect the construct. Lyris stepped in front of him, blade flaring to life with a fierce hum. "Finish it," she commanded. "I will hold them off." Her voice carried the weight of a promise she had no intention of breaking. Kale turned back to the construct, pressing both hands to the base. The golden light surged, the strands pulling faster from his body. He could feel his strength draining, his muscles trembling under the strain. Behind him, the clash of steel and the hiss of energy fire filled the air. Lyris moved like lightning, striking down every enemy that came close. Still, more kept coming, their focus divided between her and the core. One soldier broke past her defense, charging at Kale. He braced for impact, but Lyris was faster. She drove her blade through the attacker, pulling it free in one fluid motion. Blood bright and alien splashed across the black stone. She didn't pause, turning immediately to face the next. Kale felt the final pull from the construct, the golden light suddenly collapsing into a single brilliant pulse. It shot upward, vanishing through the chamber's ceiling like a beacon. The remaining soldiers froze, their weapons lowering slightly. The light was gone, but its presence lingered in the air, heavy and undeniable. Lyra stepped back toward Kale, her armor marked with fresh burns and scratches. "It is done," she said. Her breathing was heavy, but there was a fierce pride in her eyes. Kale's legs gave out, and she caught him before he hit the ground. "Rest, you have given the galaxy its chance." They left the chamber together. The silence of victory strange after so much noise. Outside, the air was clearer, the sky marked with streaks of light from distant ships. The war was far from over, but Kale knew something had shifted. The cure was beyond the reach of those who would twist it. And though the path ahead was uncertain, he also knew this: he would not walk it alone. Lyris had made sure of that.